Welcome. My name is Ed Greffenstedt, and I'm the chair of the investment committee, and I would like to welcome everyone to this public meeting. As a preliminary announcement, let me say that this meeting has been duly advertised as a public meeting in accordance with the Sunshine Act and is therefore open to members of the public as observers. A quorum is present for the transaction of business. Participation in the meeting is limited to members of the committee and to those the committee has invited in advance to participate. Due to the restrictions in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being streamed on YouTube and is also being recorded. The recording will be made available via the Board of Trustees website later this week. To the agenda, there is one action item before the committee today, and that is the establishment of the income spending percentages for the consolidated investment pool of the university's consolidated endowment fund. The background statement and resolution for this action item was circulated to the committee in advance of today's meeting. At this time, I would like to call on Harry Sastry, the university's Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, to provide an overview of the recommended income spending percentages. Harry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to read give a couple background points before reading the resolution. Some important points on the spending policy that we're about to consider. As a background, the consolidated investment pool is comprised of a number of individual funds having a variety of designated purposes and restrictions. And while each fund is distinct, they're consolidated for investment purposes and managed on a unitized basis similar to a mutual fund. In addition to donor restricted endowment funds, university managed restricted funds, including the university operating funds quasi-endowment, are also invested through the CEF. The two important points to note for this particular year is the consolidated endowment fund, excluding the operating funds quasi-endowment. The rate will be based on a 4.25% of a 3-year average fair market value of the assets, which is $4.90 per share. We are proposing no change to that percentage from the previous year. And that figure represents a 2.8% increase over the income distribution from last year. For the university operating funds quasi-endowment, similarly, we are recommending no change from the previous year. That will be based on a 4.75% of the 3-year average fair market value of the assets and is $5.48 per share. And that figure also represents a 2.8% increase above the income distribution from FY21. So therefore, I'm going to go through the resolution and then happy to answer any questions as there may be. Whereas pursuant to Article 5.7 of the university bylaws, the investment committee has been delegated the authority to approve the spending policy for the consolidated investment pool of the University of Pittsburgh Endowment Fund. And whereas the Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer has recommended no change to the income percentage for the CEF, excluding the university operating funds quasi-endowment for fiscal year 22, and has advised that the proposed income percentage as set forth in the existing spending policy is consistent with the long-term objective of preserving the real value of the donor restricted endowment assets held in trust and invested through the CEF. And whereas the officer has recommended no modifications to the separate spending policy for the university operating funds quasi-endowment and has advised that the income percentage remains consistent with the long-term objective of having a higher rate of income distributed from such university management restricted fund than from the remaining funds in the CEF. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in accordance with Pennsylvania Act 141, the investment committee hereby 1, approves the recommended income distribution from the CEF for fiscal year 22 of $4.9020925 per share, which represents an income percentage of 4.25% of the 3-year average fair market value of the assets. And 2, determines that such percentage is consistent with the long-term preservation of the real value of assets held in trust by the university. And be it further resolved that the investment committee hereby approves the recommended income distribution amount from the university operating funds quasi-endowment for fiscal year 22 of $5.478893 per share, which represents an income percentage of 4.75% of the 3-year average fair market value of such assets. So I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have before we vote.
Okay, hearing no questions or comments, Now I have a motion and second on the resolution authorizing the income percentages.
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, then I thank you and the resolution is approved. Is there any new business to be brought before this committee? There being no additional business, then this meeting is adjourned. We thank you all for participating and thank you, Harry.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye now.